Namaste, everyone. This is Vidal, Maheshananda. Welcome to the Satsanga podcast, where we discuss Ayurveda, Vedanta, yoga, and Vedic astrology. And we discuss these different wisdom traditions and how they can be practiced in our life and become an integral part of promoting an evolutionary life. This week's discussion will focus on the topic of coffee. And I've titled it, Is Coffee a Bomb or a Bonus? I wanted to speak about this because we live in an age where stimulation is taking over our lives. The rate at which we live and communicate, and the pace of life has become so fast that instant gratification has become at the forefront of every aspect of our life. And it only seems to be increasing more and more. We do different things in our life, whether it be buy cars, buy certain tickets, increase our technology, gadgets, buy certain running shoes, do certain workouts, many things. Think about all of the different things in your life and how the choices that you make around those different aspects of your life are all driven by speed, stimulation, and the idea that my life is improving. So going back to the title, is coffee a bomb in my body? Or is coffee a bonus in my life? This is a big question, and I wanted to discuss it because this high-speed, instant gratification culture is being bombarded by coffee. And I want to use the word coffee as a metaphor for a moment, and then come back to understanding coffee from a very practical level and how it influences the body and whether or not it's a bomb or a bonus. Both of these aspects are important. Let's explore the metaphorical aspect of coffee for a moment. So as we continue to live our lives, and now the majority of the human population live in urban environments and higher density environments, this shift actually only recently happened. I believe it was about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, where when global populations were being looked at, where more and more people were migrating to. And this study was done, I don't remember exactly where it came from, but looking at global population over the last, I believe it was maybe 500 years, 1,000 years, somewhere in that time frame. And we have to understand that global population has increased more in the last 100 years than it has in the history of life, or at least however long we as humans have been measuring population increases on the planet Earth. So, the last 100 years, we have not only doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and even increased our population tenfold. People like to be with people. People are sensory beings. We're sentient beings as well. And this is the big conundrum. We have sensitivity, we have occult and intuitive capacities, but we also have sensory functions. The telephones that extend outward, sight, touch, taste, smell, and hearing. These senses are how we enjoy the world and how we function in the world. Most of our world makes decisions, choices, based on the senses. So when someone asks you, well, how do you feel? How are you? Most typically respond based on their sensory experience, how they are currently feeling on a sensory level. So we have a way of feeling our body, our connection to our body through our senses, but we also have the capacity to feel within our bodies, which requires transcending the senses and going beyond the sensory realm into that domain that is more sensitive. So we use sensitivity as a vehicle, as a very powerful tool to traverse the function of the senses. So they're good, we need them, we use them on a day-to-day basis. But these senses are overstimulated. We often thrive by more stimulation or an increased rate of stimulation. And that energy, that experience that we're having, perpetuates attachment. This feels good. I need that thing to feel this way more often. And we continue to fall into that recording, into that conditioning. The faster we go, the further we go out. The slower we go and increase our capacity to be present, to be still, the deeper and the greater and more profound is our experience, to transcend. All humans, whether they're aware of this or not, are looking for the experience or the capacity to transcend the gadgets, the superficial, the highly stimulative experiences. All humans are looking to transcend that, something that will take them to their original source that is beyond time and space, that is beyond that identification with I, or need, or crave, or desire this world. But how do we awaken that tremendous, powerful intelligence, consciousness that is within us? And going back to the title, is coffee a bomb? For now, I'm going to say yes. Coffee is a bomb in the superficial realm of the body and the senses, because it can distort us and distract us and make us too agitated or anxious. But this also depends on the person and many other factors that Ayurveda teaches us that I'm going to speak about in a few moments. However, to attain and experience that domain, that capacity to transcend, can often require or depend on a bomb dropping in our lives. Something, some experience that catapults us, that kind of, I'll use the word nudge, or knocks us out in such a way that we're looking a certain way. This is where I'm headed. This is what I do. This is what I need to attain or achieve for my life. And we talk about, what are your goals? And what are you doing with your life? And this is what happens when we're looking the other way. This bomb that drops is a blessing and can be a tremendous portal to experience an opportunity to grow, to evolve, and to awaken to this domain that exists within us. So challenges in our life and difficulties and the whole concept of war, a war or a battle that we're fighting with this world, in many ways is essentially a battle within our own self. And each and every one of us must overcome our own battles. All battles are on an individual basis. And they're unique and prescribed according to that person Yes, we can compare and say, yes, we have similarities and I can relate to that story, and on and on. However, each and every one of us has a very unique way of overcoming our battles and seeing them and those battles as our teachers. Rich or poor, healthy or sick, sun or rain. This contrast will always exist. And Vedanta, the great philosophy, the great wisdom of India, that says we are one. Consciousness is one. We are not separate of this world. That great wisdom tradition, teaching, is a support, is a great teacher to help us to realize that there are stories within stories. Everyone has their story. Everyone has their narrator that is narrating this story within our own heads. This happened to me and I can't believe it. And we often point the finger. We often don't understand why these bombs are dropping in our life. And yes, astrology, our past karma as astrology helps us to understand that, can give us a guide map to understand how and when certain bombs may drop in our life. Bombs as challenges, bombs as opportunities for growing, for transcending, and for learning to become more resilient, to become more anchored. So in this way, the outer world and its highly stimulative and fast-paced approach can be a great bonus. Because there is never really a resolution in going faster or being more clever. It lies the bonus of this hyper-stimulated world leaves us with a tremendous bonus. That every time that faster, that sensory, super jolting power of the outer mind drives us to realize, I can't solve this externally. I can't find peace and contentment by waiting or forcing some outer event to occur or some scenario to change. All of those bombs, circumstances, and externalizations, I'll use that term to generalize this, are bonuses. Because if we don't get it the first time, another bomb can drop and bring us to hopefully looking within deeper. And we have to ask God, We have to ask our guru, nature, whoever your guru, and where you link to draw wisdom in from. Why? Help me to understand. And we begin to cultivate a dialogue, a relationship with the divine and the entire world process is an opportunity and a guru in itself to help us to reflect and to recognize the tremendous bonuses that lie in those challenges, the tremendous bonuses and benefits that lie in whatever obstacles we're perceiving in our life, and to use them as a catalyst for growth, for greater compassion, and promoting peace. So, is coffee a bomb or a bonus? I want to speak now on the idea that coffee gives us greater capacity to concentrate and get things done. I want to talk about coffee as an adrenal booster, as a supercharging drink. And this, for the sake of this conversation, includes, when we're speaking about coffee, we're speaking about all highly caffeinated, highly stimulated drinks, and this includes large amounts of sugar. We can throw in very strong teas, green teas, black teas, and all of the modern drinks that have been created in recent times that basically stimulate the adrenal gland. And that gland, as part of our hormonal system, produces a hormonal feeling, a actual secretion that occurs within our body that releases an energy, a vital energy, a very powerful energy, I will say. So much so that we see people line up every morning, every day, several times a day, over and over and over again, for that same feeling, that same experience. That after some time they feel they need, oh, I need this. And eventually, in many people, what we're seeing are addictions, conditions that the mind develops that contributes to the type of thinking that says, I need this. This helps me. However, they don't recognize that that type of thinking is a trap, has its faults, and on a much deeper medical level has deep implications on our immunity, on our capacity to sleep, and our capacity to truly be stable. Let me explain this from the Ayurvedic perspective. What is good for one is not necessarily good for another. Never forget that. Ayurveda as a wisdom teaching that promotes health, longevity, and great immunity follows the idea and the teaching that we're all unique and distinct. Our body, our mind-body set has very unique and distinct qualities, capacities, and this is all dependent on the wisdom or the teaching of tridosha, that of the 5 great elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, we can simplify and condense the great 5 elements to the trine or the trinity of creation, which basically explains that there is a destructive force in our life, there is a creative force, and there is a preserving force. The destructive force in Ayurveda is referred to as Vata dosha, and this corresponds to the air element. The creative force is referred to as Pitta dosha, and this corresponds to the fire element. And the preserving force corresponds to the water element. And this is referred to as Kapha dosha. So these doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, all have their qualities according to the element that they correspond with. And each and every mind-body type, every person, embodied soul, has a variation or a combination of air, fire, and water. Some people have more air in their body. Some people have more fire in their body. Some people have more water in their body. Some have a combination of these. The majority of people have a combination of these elements. Air and fire, or maybe fire and water, or water and air. And you can see this in the body type. You can see it in the way they function and think and the way their body metabolizes. The very bottom line is coffee is a stimulant. It's acidic. Coffee is a stimulant. It is acidic. And because the air element, or those individuals that have a certain amount or a majority of air element in their mind-body constitution, if that person drinks or is hyperstimulated in any way, whether it be a drink or a food or some sense impression, some outer device that is impressing the mind and the brain at a higher pace, at a faster pace, this is counter-supportive and contradictory to those body types and those individuals that are of the Vata dosha constitution. Why? Because air is quick, air is fast, air has a moving quality. It's like the wind. And we see certain types. Their minds are that way, going from thought to thought, multitasking all the time. They take a little longer to fall asleep. They're like birds, these individuals. Look at a bird. Is it ever really that still? No. It's moving its head constantly. It's flapping its wings. They have a low lifespan, right? And that's usually the case. You look at the animal kingdom, those creatures, those animals that are of predominantly the air element, do not live as long, have a shorter lifespan. But those that are of a water and earth predominance, like a tortoise, maybe an elephant, and other reptiles like gators, tend to live much, much longer. They're slower, more grounded, these creatures. So, like attracts like. And it is usually the case that many people that are fast, that are active, that like stimulation, tend to want more of that, tend to take more of that in. Because it feels, or they can associate with that type of energy. There's a synergy with it. Fiery people like to be with other fiery people. They are stimulated by that. You look at more earthy water people that enjoy conversation, that tend to have a slower pace in their life, that tend to think about things a little bit more. And all of the loyal and the very positive qualities that come with water and earth. Those individuals tend to enjoy each other. And so this is the trap of like attracts like. Because that initial connection that we have with similar things, when overdone or over-repeated, lead to imbalances. This is what's happening in our world. And on a very simple and practical level, this is what's happening to many individuals that have Vata in their constitution. Again, this means they're of an airy nature. And from the astrological perspective, this can mean maybe Geminis, an air sign, Libras, an air sign, right? And these types tend to be wittier, quicker. And that influence can lead to imbalances. Because we have a pace of life that is already so fast. Forget about letter writing. Nobody does that anymore. It's got to be an email. It's got to be a text now. Emails take too long. People don't check emails every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds. We have to text now. And so companies, friends are bombarding, advertising agencies, bombarding everyone now with the next fastest thing. This is where coffee is becoming so detrimental to so many people today. I see it as a practitioner. Case after case, week after week. I cannot sleep, Mas. Help me. What can I do? They know their sleep is not good. They're getting up in the middle of the night. They're not feeling rested in the morning. It takes them longer and longer to fall asleep. All of these things point to the coffee bomb in the body. Every time a person drops that bomb in their gut, it cranks up the brain. It increases our heart rate. Yes, it can increase blood pressure and can promote hypertension. And this secretion, this actual hormonal response that we're experiencing, can exhaust us and can lead to low immunity and a compromise to our immune system. It's that simple. Why? Because immunity depends on deep sleep. And we as a world culture now, especially those living in urban environments, are not sleeping very well. This is all a whole nother conversation. Yes, immunity and sleep are correlated. You will never be able to strengthen or increase your immunity until you can deepen your sleep and sleep through and have a restful night's sleep. And this requires much more explanation to understand what deep sleep is and what is a restful night. Because it doesn't include all of the prescription medications that many people are taking these days and other things that they are requiring to just get the mind to shut off. So this is a warning of caution to many of you that aren't sleeping well, that aren't feeling grounded, that do not have a sense of strength and endurance. And you find yourself perhaps catching a flu every year and getting sick more and more often and dropping the bomb in the body for these types of people that struggle more and more to concentrate. Because initially that coffee, yes, it can help. It can help to promote concentration. It has that quality of increasing alertness because of what is happening within the physiology. But after a period of time, when it becomes excessive and overused, especially when there is no awareness of the season, in particular, this is very important, around the seasons where air element is higher. What are those seasons? The drier seasons, the cooler seasons. Those seasons, spring and fall, increase air and that element as a force, as an energy, a force of nature within us. So when we're doing things or drinking things that increase that dryness or that faster thinking or that lightness, that kind of hypersensitive alertness during those seasons, can it lead to a vata dosha imbalance? Yes. Can it lead to disturbed sleep? Yes. Because now the season, nature, the most powerful force on creation, is influencing all her little natures, these individual mind bodies that are running around the planet, are being more stimulated during these two seasons. Very simple. This is why in Ayurveda we give various suggestions, dietary and many other lifestyle practices during those seasons to counter the increasing effects and the potential that air has during those two seasons. This also goes for different planetary cycles. As I often say, some cycles are very beneficial in our life, very positive, very benefic. And other cycles have negative effect or more challenging effect. Some are long, some are short. And these cycles influence different elements in our life. This is where the medical astrology comes into play. Because Saturn cycles and even Venus periods can bring disturbances to Vata dosha, to the air element. And this is why, somebody says, I've mostly slept really well in my life, but it started about 2 or 3 years ago. And suddenly I just, I dream a lot now. I'm waking up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and I don't know why. Where is it coming from? And suddenly I'm more sensitive to temperature. Like when it gets cold, I just don't like it anymore. Perhaps you're in that stage of life. So this is the beauty and the powerful wisdom of Ayurveda, Vedic astrology, and how we apply it and can apply it in such a practical way. Again, what is good for one may not be so good for another. And some of us may be saying, coffee really works for me. And I've never experienced any disturbance in my sleep. And I sleep really well. In fact, I can drink coffee right around dinner or after dinner and go to bed pretty soon after that. But again, that individual may have a very different mind-body complex. And so their arrangement of the elements and maybe the particular cycles, astrological cycles that they have been in for much of their life hasn't been affected by a stimulant like a coffee. But it doesn't mean that will always be the case. Don't think that because you've gotten away with it for all of your life and everything's been fine, that there isn't a period that may come that may throw off that imbalance and create an imbalance in your life. So we have to understand that there are no bad foods. There is no food. There is nothing that is created by nature that is bad. We always have to apply the principle of how, when, and who. Because we're constantly, especially in our Western approach, because we don't have an original culture. We don't have an ancient wisdom tradition. We're all a bunch of mutts here in the Western world. We put together and piecemeal health programs and diet regimes and many things, and we take from many different traditions. Perfectly fine. But again, remember that nature is not bad and food is not bad. And what we're trying to say here is that how you drink coffee and how you use coffee or any stimulant that is within that kind of adrenal jolt, how is that affecting us? And we have to say that some can get away with it and some cannot. And in all transparency, I want to say that I do drink coffee. I practice using coffee, yes, when I have projects. when I know that I want to focus my mind on a particular task, I typically do not use coffee when I'm just going to relax or go for a walk or meditate or do yoga, right? Or even read. It is typically something that I use when I write, when I have to do my work and my modern responsibilities, and when I'm very active in that way. And because I have, and I'll use myself as an example, air element in my astrology with some Libra influences there in my ascendant, and I have Vata in my constitution, I'm very careful to not drink coffee on a regular basis. Yes, that means I do not drink it every day, and I avoid making it a pattern. Some weeks I may drink it, and some weeks I may not. And I also try to apply this per the season. If I know, we're in the fall season, so to speak, or spring, or whatever season you may be listening to this satsang, I know that if Vata is strong during fall, I try to pull back and make it extra irregular in my routine, because I know the force of nature is boosting that air element, and I have to be careful with foods and substances that can have a hyperstimulating effect on my mind, my nervous system, and even impact my sleep. The other aspect of coffee I want to speak about has to do with its acidic nature. And fire element, Pitta dosha, is increased with acidity. This is another consideration of coffee, especially drinking coffee on an empty stomach and high amounts of coffee, because the bean itself, its elements, without going into a scientific breakdown as to what is inside of the bean itself. I'm not making coffee bad. I don't want anyone to do that because it is grown in nature, but it does have a very acidic influence on the body. And acidity is correlated to fire. If you're of a fiery nature, of a fiery type, if you typically are very prone to hyperacidity or inflammatory conditions in your body, and you're experiencing high inflammation, coffee is not helping you. Again, you may be getting away with this now. But you fire types, those of a symmetrical build, those of you that have a very strong metabolism, those of you that are very athletic, very driven, in many cases competitive, you don't have a struggle with too much weight gain in your body, and on and on. These are many of the factors of Pitta, fire, in your body, mind-body type. You may be getting away and enjoying. I use this idea of getting away with it because often we see that all of us can enjoy all types of foods and drinks and things without it creating a negative or an imbalancing effect on our body. But it doesn't mean that there may not come a time when one or several of these factors or foods may create some disturbance to our body. So relative to the fire types and the use of coffee, you may get away with it and use it in your life without any imbalance and enjoy it as a pleasure, as a sense pleasure, as the smell that it has. But here's a simple example. Let's say you've been a coffee drinker for years and years, and you're in that mid stage of your life. You're about 40-some years old. And you live in the Midwest, let's just say, the Midwestern part of the United States, or some part of the world where you have a cooler amount of weather. You have a nice cold winter, and you don't have a more tropical type climate. And suddenly you just decide to change the foods that you eat. And you tend to now eat bland foods, very American foods, for example, that usually only have salt, pepper, and some butter, some oils, maybe some garlic in it. And you don't have a spicy diet. But then you start becoming interested or introduced to a Mexican diet, or foods that have higher spices in them, or more oil in them, or maybe more acidic foods like citrus. And you start increasing acidic, spice, or oil into your diet for whatever reason and however it came into your life. And now you do this for 6 months, for a year, and you're continuing to drink your coffee every morning. And suddenly you notice that your stools are looser. Perhaps you are seeing a rash come up on your skin. And maybe you begin to notice that you have some body odor, which you never had before. You're starting to smell. You put your nose under your armpit and you notice there's an odor there. I'm just sharing with you some of the factors of increased fire in the body. And inflammation is a major factor there. However, it does take longer to develop because inflammation, in essence, from the Ayurvedic perspective, is an increase of fire, which is at the very center of the body in the metabolism. And that fire is expanding within, but it is not escaping the body. It is not being allowed to leave the body via sweat or via the stool. There may be some block or constipation. The pore of the skin begins to close. And that fire in many ways gets trapped inside of the body. And it starts to expand within to the periphery of the body itself. And that swelling, or hence inflammation, is a common symptom of high fire. So going back to this person that was regularly drinking coffee and began to change their diet to these oily, spicy, maybe acidic foods, and suddenly these symptoms start to show up in their life. Or maybe they move from the Midwest or a region that's cooler to a more tropical area. And they continue to include coffee in their diet, and they don't realize that now that tropical climate has a very different effect on our metabolism, on our physiology. And I'm seeing this a lot currently within the United States, because a lot of people have been moving from New York to Miami, to South Florida. And coffee is a big part in New York, especially that high-paced Wall Street life. Everyone's go, 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 running around, and it's cold there. And now I'm seeing a lot of people in Miami experience the shift. Their body is now having to adjust to this new climate, but yet they keep dropping the acid bomb in the gut. That has an effect, especially if you're in your midlife. We talked about, your 40s, anywhere between 20s, 30s, and 40s, that fire, that roaster oven is high in your body. It's not until post 50 that the fire, the metabolism begins to slow. And again, this is nature's wisdom. This is wisdom that is available to all of us. This is not my teaching. I'm just a vessel sharing the knowledge. And so I hope you start to get that in this way, and for these air and fire types, Vata and Pitta, or some combination, or maybe it's a stage in your life, and you're going into an astrological period that is more airy or more fiery, maybe a Mars period, right, or a solar period. And these factors start to affect and influence our life. So again, what is good for one may not be good for another. And to ask that question, hey, is this good for you? Or is this food really good? And again, I often respond when I'm asked this question: who, when, and where? All of those factors have to be applied. We cannot continue to follow cookie-cutter formulas of dietetics, of systems that keep treating humanity as all being the same. And we have to learn from these great traditions and apply things according to how and when we may need them. Things change, the body changes, cycles change, influences, and these foods affect us differently at different times in our life. And this is why Ayurveda is so valuable. And this is why consulting an Ayurvedic counselor or practitioner is so important and can be so powerful in our life. This is where this wisdom tradition can complement modern allopathic medicine and all other health and wellness systems. That's the greatness of Ayurveda. In fact, the great treatise, the great text, Charaka, says this, that those of us, and though the great practitioner, a great doctor of Ayurveda, is one who recognizes and extracts the greatness of all wisdom or health traditions and uses that in an integral, holistic way. Come to the mother of Ayurveda and apply it in your life and see how remarkable it is. And it becomes a tremendous bonus in your life. Is coffee a bomb or a bonus in your life? It's a bomb if you're going against what you need to balance your mind and body. If you're not sleeping well, if you're unsettled and anxious and don't feel grounded and calm on a moment-to-moment basis, how can drinking coffee be good for you? Why do we continue to ignore the things that we know aren't helpful? How do we continue to ignore those things? Because we have lost a sense of control over our mind, of discipline over our senses, and we're just following the Joneses. Oh, my friends keep inviting me to coffee. Or, it's because everybody else is going out for drinks, I got to go for drinks. And so we have to kind of create a sort of a regulation and a proper appropriation for how we use these things. For example, in athletics, and I'm a big athletic person, I've always been a big proponent of all types of athletics. I enjoy it. And I love to see human strength and focus and discipline be used. As long as it's used in an ethical and in a way that promotes human compassion for each other and respect for each other, and not as a violent form in our life. And I often have said, going back to the point I was just going to make, is that even in athletics, some may benefit a lot by training a lot every day, by working out a lot every day. But there are periods where all can benefit by not training every day. Less can be better. Less can often be more a benefit. I've seen that. Oftentimes when I take a couple of days off, instead of just one day, I'll take 2 off and go 1 on, 2 off, 1 on, 2 off. My energy level soars, my workouts are better, my yoga sadhana, my meditations become deeper. I'm not saying don't meditate every day. I'm saying change the practice, adapt the practice. Because if you're not applying your meditation and integrating it into your daily life, then what good is long, deep meditation and sitting there in stillness like a yogi for long hours? If you're not carrying that consciousness and that vibration into everything that you do, then it's just a thing. Just some things to think about. And this idea of coffee being a bomb or a bonus is something that I want us all to think about. And bring in that approach and that viewpoint that nothing is bad. And then some may say, well, then are drugs bad? Well, I think that medicine and certain prescription medications have their place in our society. If, when, who, what, all of those factors have to be considered. Is it the right time? Is it the right person? Have you exhausted all natural means? Have you made a substantial effort to change your habits? This is where I had such an issue with the pandemic. When our world and our governments and our medical systems are pushing medications and requiring people to do things that supposedly would promote immunity, when most people are living a contradictory life and doing many things in their diet and their lifestyle that contradict immunity. So how can you take a medication when you're doing many things that go against supporting immunity? And again, my view is, do what is natural. Take responsibility for your immunity, so that we're not all just walking bombs waiting to explode. And let us encourage people to adapt and to practice the importance of adaptation. We have to appropriate and know that faster and go, 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 and that intensity of the coffee modern life will lead us potentially in the wrong direction and can lead us to deficiencies in our health and our well-being, because there is a great bonus that lies within all of us. If we can just calm the mind enough, if we can just slow the mind enough, we can begin to feel, and we can begin to go beyond taste, touch, smell, the five senses that we talked about at the very beginning of the satsang. And if we can begin that process of transcending, that experience is available to all of us. It is the bonus that lies within all of us. So, go enjoy your coffee, your mocha, your latte, whatever it is you like. But think about, is it right for me right now? Is it a bomb that I'm dropping inside of me? Or is it truly a bonus for me right now in my life? And thank you for listening and for bringing this great wisdom into your life. Share it, and together let us make this outer world a more peaceful and harmonious place. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace to all. Namaste.